Señores, lo de Donald Trump ya no es una sorpresa, pero sigue siendo escandaloso. Estamos presenciando una de las administraciones más corruptas en la historia moderna de Estados Unidos. Y lo más increíble es que ni siquiera lo disimula. No hablamos de cosas que se ocultan en la oscuridad. Estamos hablando de corrupción a plena luz de día. Acepta favores, usa jets privados, manipula mercados y todo sin una pizca de vergüenza. Cuando intenta esconder algo, ahí es donde las cosas se ponen realmente turbias, incluso hasta criminales. Y justo es lo que acaba de revelar un artículo bomba del New York Times. Amigos, hoy vamos a analizar uno de los episodios más descarados de corrupción durante esta presidencia. Uno que ha hecho que el propio Trump entre en pánico porque se está filtrando todo. Vamos a empezar por una mentira reciente por parte de su portavoz, Karoline Leavitt, que sinceramente solo termina empeorando todo este asunto. Escuchemos.
Let me just get to the premise of your question that both of you have raised. I think it's frankly ridiculous that anyone in this room would even suggest that President Trump is doing anything for his own benefit. He left a life of luxury and a life of running a very successful real estate empire for public service, not just once, but twice. And again, the American public reelected him back to this White House because they trust he acts in the best interests of our country and putting the American public first. This is a president who has actually lost money for being president of the United States. I don't remember these same type of questions being asked of my predecessor about a career politician who was clearly profiting off of this office. That is not what President Trump does, and this White House holds ourselves to the highest of ethical standards. Phil.
Y es que amigos, realmente me cuesta creer que Karoline Leavitt haya podido decir eso sin que se le moviera tan solo un músculo de la cara. O sea, todos sabemos que Trump no se metió a la política por amor al país. Desde mucho antes del 2016, él ya estaba coqueteando con la idea, ¿no? Todo sea por fama, por interés personal, por ego. Y su regreso en este 2024 no fue por convicción patriótica, fue para evitar la cárcel, para seguir exprimiendo dinero de sus seguidores, tal y como lo ha hecho recientemente con sus estafas de criptomonedas. Pero no solo está sacándole la plata a sus fans, también está vendiendo favores políticos a donantes ricos y a corporaciones. Y eso, amigos, es exactamente lo que reveló The New York Times. Antes de que entremos a esos detalles, en el reportaje quiero mostrarles algo que dijo el senador Chris Murphy porque encaja perfectamente con todo este asunto. Escuchemos.
But I will just tell you that democracies do not die in an instant. Very few democracies that have perished have a day, a before and after moment. It's a descent. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you discover that you're not in a democracy any longer, that the leader, the president, has so much power that it can never be taken away. And the steps that have been taken by Donald Trump in the first week are a masterclass in the kind of plan that you would undertake if you wanted to grab power permanently. You say to your supporters, if you threaten or intimidate my opposition, I'll let you off the hook. You cast darkness over what happens inside the agencies so the president can move money any way that he wants without any accountability. And you seize control of spending so that you can use money to reward your friends and punish your enemies.
So a week ago, there was this story that a trucking company bought $20 million of Trump meme coin solely because they believed that was the way that they were going to get tariff relief.
Shortly after Donald Trump had typed in all caps, no exemptions. I know he meant it because he typed it in all caps.
So once the story is out that you can pay your way out of tariff relief, it just becomes normalized in the economy. So we still get screwed. So the corruption just is icky and it's wrong and it's illegal and unconstitutional. No president should enrich themselves off of tariffs or any other federal policy, but it also really doesn't do anything about the cost.
Y es que lo ha dejado claro. Esta es una presidencia con fines de lucro. Donald Trump está recibiendo enormes donaciones para su famosa biblioteca presidencial. Cuando todos sabemos, amigos, que eso será más bien un museo de su ego. Lo más preocupante es el tema de los indultos. Él está dispuesto a perdonar a cualquiera que cometa delitos por él. Corrupción, violencia, fraude, todo le da igual. Si tú le eres útil o le pagas bien, te perdonan. Y eso es exactamente lo que reveló The New York Times. Resulta que Donald Trump le otorgó un perdón presidencial a Paul Wolfgang, un ejecutivo de residencias de ancianos que había sido condenado por evasión de impuestos. Pero aquí viene lo fuerte, diría yo. No fue por un argumento legal sólido. No fue porque fuera inocente. No, amigos. Fue porque su madre, Elizabeth Fugu, había recaudado millones de dólares para las campañas de Trump y otros republicanos. La solicitud de perdón mencionaba explícitamente esta conexión, incluso su implicación en una operación sucia para divulgar el diario personal de la hija de Joe Biden en el año 2020. Es decir, que ayudó a dañar la imagen del entonces candidato demócrata. Y a pesar, amigos, de todo esto, no le llegaba el indulto, nada, hasta que, coincidencia, su madre fue invitada a una cena de recaudación de fondos, adivinen, en Mar-a-Lago. Precio de entrada, $1 millón por cabeza. Esta cena incluía acceso directo a Trump. Y adivinen, ¿qué sucedió luego de esa cena? Menos de 3 semanas después, Donald Trump firmó el perdón completo e incondicional. Justamente y justo a tiempo, para que no tuviera que pagar estos $4.4 millones en restitución ni cumplir su condena de 18 meses en prisión. Una jueza lo había dicho muy claro: los ricos no tienen una tarjeta para salir de la cárcel gratis, pero Donald Trump demostró que sí, que en su mundo, con el dinero suficiente, tú puedes comprar tu libertad. Amigos, estamos hablando de una burla total a la justicia. Literalmente estamos viendo una presidencia donde todo se puede comprar. Un pay-to-play presidency. Y lo peor es que no se esconde, ¿no? Este no es un caso aislado. Es solo una muestra más de cómo Trump ha utilizado su poder para beneficiar a sus amigos ricos, para castigar a sus enemigos. Y eso, amigos, es un mensaje directo a los poderosos. Si tú me apoyas, te cuido. Si tú me atacas, te destruyo.
After your nomination to head up the IRS, you received nearly $200,000 in campaign contributions, including from tax preparation firms who might have committed tax fraud. When we met, I asked if you would recuse yourself from decisions involving those donors. You very clearly said that you would not recuse yourself. That's what you said to me a few days ago, but it's been a few days, so I want to ask again, for the record, is it still your testimony that you will not recuse yourself from investigations involving these campaign donors?
I'm not going to deal in hypotheticals, but the OGE report, or whatever it's called, that I signed has very specific things on what I could be involved in and not, so I'm going to go with the OGE that I signed.
Do you think that in the matter of public service, perception matters, that taxpayers, that American taxpayers should have confidence that you are making decisions based on what's right for them and not what's right for you? Do you think that's...
If I wanted what was right for me, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today, but yeah.
Well, you chose to sit there, which is why I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, yeah.
So perception matters in terms of the public trust.
Right, perception's reality in the mind of the perceiver, sure.
Congressman Long, Americans deserve fair treatment from the IRS. No one should be favored for their wealth or connections, nor should anyone be targeted for their political views. Sadly, sadly, attempts to weaponize the IRS are not new. We've seen this time and time again in our history. In the 1970s, President Nixon repeatedly tried to use the IRS to investigate his enemies, who included civil rights leaders, it included journalists, and even members of Congress. Luckily, multiple IRS commissioners refused to carry out the president's orders. These public servants, in my view, are American heroes. They put the rule of law above partisan politics, and in a real sense, they put it above their careers. They were focused on what's right. And in response to their principled stand, Congress passed a law on a bipartisan basis, to prohibit any president from directing the IRS to target any taxpayer. Thank you so very much. I enjoyed meeting with you in my office last week, and when we met, you and I discussed how President Trump has called for auditing Harvard University because of their political stances. We also talked about how an administration official suggested that the IRS should stop auditing some of the president's top political allies, including Mike Lindell.
Mientras tanto, pues los mismos que reciben los perdones de Trump se quejan diciendo que el gobierno de Biden los persigue por razones políticas, ¿no? Dicen que son víctimas, cuando en realidad están admitiendo delitos. Tenemos a la gente de MAGA diciendo que son perseguidos políticos, mientras Trump realmente sí está persiguiendo a sus propios enemigos, utilizando los tribunales, utilizando el Congreso y hasta instituciones como el IRS para poder atacar a quienes se lo oponen. Yo creo que aquí la hipocresía ya no puede ser más descarada. Una presidencia que se puede comprar. Un presidente que se deja sobornar por cenas carísimas, por halagos vacíos, por lo que sea. Simplemente vergonzoso. Pues bueno, señores, pasemos al siguiente tema. Porque en pleno siglo XXI no es posible que aún existan políticos que estén coqueteando con las ideas que nos recuerdan a los peores momentos de la historia. Los campos de internamiento de japoneses en la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Yo sé que suena muy exagerado, amigos, pero no lo es. El abuso del poder estatal para poder restringir derechos básicos, como lo es el debido proceso, y todo esto como excusa en nombre de la seguridad nacional o de la guerra contra la inmigración. Y lo sé, amigos, yo sé que hablar de leyes, detenciones y derechos puede sonar muy pesado, ¿no? Pero les prometo que hoy vamos a hablar de algo que no solo impacta a Estados Unidos, sino que refleja una peligrosa tendencia global. El gobierno de Estados Unidos ha suspendido derechos fundamentales en momentos de crisis. Como mencioné hace un momento, tal como lo hizo con los ciudadanos de origen japonés durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Pero lo más alarmante es cómo Trump y algunos de sus aliados están utilizando esa historia como la excusa para empujar políticas actuales que están rozando con lo autoritario. Y amigos, lo que van a escuchar seguramente los va a hacer pensar. Veamos esto.
We've been looking at how America got to the place of securing what has been a long-running, multi-hundred-year sacrosanct right that's only been fortified or built up over time against governments or king-like politicians' desires to abuse detention powers. Now, there are moments, to be sure, where those rights that I've been telling you about have indeed been suspended. After Pearl Harbor, which was the actual World War that most legal experts say is the kind of thing, unlike a fake war or fake invasion, that can trigger certain enhanced presidential powers. there were great fears of how the Japanese opponents and enemies might come in or abuse situations in the U.S. And so there was an executive order that actually didn't work very well, according to most folks who's ever looked into this and historians, seen as kind of a panic of the time, although it also was an existential World War scenario. But it basically made a giant over-inclusive category and tried to take people of any Japanese descent without any other security analysis and put them into internment camps in the U.S. And the Supreme Court ruled in Korematsu that that was, at the time in war, a national security constitutional act. So that's what it looked like in one of the rare times this has happened. But most scholars, legal experts, and even many military experts say that that was not the right call with all the facts in. And if you go to law school and you talk to judges, including many Federalist Society, conservative judges, and legal experts, they say it's one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever. Here's President Reagan, who issued an apology for the action.
120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry living in the United States were forcibly removed from their homes and placed in makeshift internment camps. This action was taken without trial, without jury. It was based solely on race. Yet we must recognize that the internment of Japanese Americans was just that, a mistake.
A mistake as policy and legally. Well, again, in the moment you can say it was lawful in the sense that some bad things are lawful at the time, but it is not a precedent that any serious mainstream figure in law or military expertise has pointed to for support in a long time. Reagan even established a Civil Liberties Act, which acknowledged what he called that mistake and injustice. Now, Trump's Solicitor General John Sauer actually brought this up during his confirmation hearing in agreement with the idea that it was a mistake.
I believe there was a court order there that upheld, which has now been, I think, correctly repudiated by virtually everyone, a court order that upheld the internment of Japanese civilians in internment camps during.
As bad as it was, that court order was followed for years, was it not?
And I just wonder whether some historians might think we'd be better off if it hadn't been followed.
He wonders, in that example, if that abuse of government detention power should have not been followed. This is why they call it clever lawyering, because he works for an administration that has gone farther, not as far as Korematsu, nobody's saying that, but has gone farther than other administrations to stretch wartime detention powers, claiming a war right now, and then he's citing that in the opposite. Now, Trump wants to deport more people, and there are many ways he can do that that are constitutional. But he's also sending out lawyers to push the courts past the very lines they draw. And there's some very clear hypocrisy on the record. Take the pandemic we all lived through. Just 5 years back, it was many conservative Republicans who looked at COVID restrictions, which did, of course, restrict Americans and other individuals' liberty to some degree temporarily. And they, at the time, made the very arguments that they now resist against far graver due process violations on behalf of Trump's deportation agenda.
If you're now an American citizen living in Florida that wants to travel, they're going to put some form of restriction in your way. I mean, it's clearly unconstitutional.
I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country.
The pandemic has resulted in previously unimaginable restrictions on individual liberty.
Justice Samuel Alito criticizing a SCOTUS ruling pausing the deportation of Venezuelan men. Alito says that the court behaved hastily and prematurely.
How do you have the authority to order something that so clearly contravenes the Bill of Rights of the United States, the U.S. Constitution?
I am for due process specifically for me. I'm not that concerned whether someone who broke a law, my law, to get into my country and is taking welfare from my pocket gets due process.
Due process for, quote, me, not for them or you. But that's the whole point. Remember, due process attaches regardless of what someone's accused of, because that's the whole point. And there are people who've been convicted of terrible things, all the way up, including murder, who under our system are entitled to due process. And murderers, whatever their nationality, obviously by the end of the process, you feel a lot of judgment of them. But they get the due process along the way. And a lot of reasonable people would say a murderer is worse than an unlawful migrant, even if both broke different rules. So there you have the conservatives who are on record quite recently in a real-world example saying Bill of Rights, due process rules, COVID objections, and now they're going soft, they're going wobbly, some of them, sweeping other people's rights to the side, sometimes admitting as a matter of rhetoric or perhaps confession that they just want to do it selectively. And if you want to do it selectively, then you don't support human rights, because they are for all humans. That's why what we're hearing from about deportation, and this will only apply to them, or maybe a few more of them, or even more, but maybe not you, is getting the whole thing backwards.
Y es que, señores, Reagan, el mismísimo presidente republicano, llegó a admitir en cadena nacional que lo que hizo Estados Unidos fue un error legal y moral. No solo lo dice porque, sino que firma una ley reconociendo esa injusticia. Y sin embargo, hoy tenemos políticos del mismo partido defendiendo medidas similares. ¿Qué es lo que está pasando? Es el ejemplo clarísimo de cómo una nación puede corregir sus errores del pasado, sin embargo, años después, usa los mismos errores como una justificación solo para repetirlo. La administración de Trump, no señores, no ha mandado a nadie a campos, aún, pero ha estado promoviendo políticas de detención masiva de inmigrantes. Se ha estado saltando todos los pasos básicos con el derecho del debido proceso. Hay abogados del gobierno defendiendo estos actos en tribunales, amigos, utilizando precedentes que ya han sido repudiados por la mismísima historia y la mismísima Corte Suprema. ¿Y saben qué es lo más loco? Que muchos de estos políticos que defienden las deportaciones express sin un juicio son los mismos políticos que chillaron durante la pandemia porque les pedían utilizar mascarilla o limitar reuniones familiares. O sea que las restricciones por salud pública eran una dictadura comunista, pero encerrar migrantes sin juicio es defender la patria. Háganme el favor. Ahora sé que algunos dirán, pero es que no podemos permitir que entren personas ilegalmente sin consecuencias. Y ok, estoy de acuerdo. Nadie dice que no debe de haber una ley o un control fronterizo. Lo que aquí estamos diciendo es que hasta el peor criminal tiene un juicio justo. Porque si el gobierno puede decidir arbitrariamente quién tiene o no tiene derechos, entonces ningún derecho está garantizado para nadie. Y eso ya es autoritarismo. Los derechos humanos no son negociables, y el debido proceso es uno de los pilares fundamentales de cualquier democracia. Pero bueno, señores, ¿qué opinan ustedes sobre todo esto? ¿Creen que estamos exagerando cuando comparamos estas políticas con lo que pasó en la Segunda Guerra Mundial? ¿Ustedes les parece justo lo que propone Trump y su equipo? ¿O les parece una amenaza a la democracia? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Señores, muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerden, como siempre, dale like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.